Alright, hey everybody, we are back with a new piece of content. Today we're doing a budget upgrade for Rebellion Rising, which is one of the precons for Phyrexia All Will Be One. So Rebellion Rising is a Boros deck. It focuses on kind of token generation, going wide, attacking with a lot of little creatures who are ideally getting bigger through some of our kind of like token lords. Let's go over some of the deck stats real quick. The deck has 9 pieces of removal, 4 of which are mass removal. We have 10 sources of draw. The original deck has 30 pieces of token generation, 7 pieces of synergy, which kind of pump up our tokens, either specifically tokens or just like all of our creatures as a whole. And then it kind of has one finisher in the form of our Silverwing Squadron, right? So it's power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures we control. We're going wide. We're going to have a lot of creatures very quickly. But that being said, we're looking to upgrade this deck. We're not going to touch the mana base at all. We definitely could, right? There's 11 plains, 11 mountains. I'm sure that there's a couple tap lands in this deck that could be replaced with other things. Upgrading the lands is boring, and we're not going to do it, right? Let's go over the 10 cards out and the 10 cards in. I'll explain kind of why I'm taking each card out, as well as why I'm adding each card. Our budget for this upgrade is $25. So, we're definitely not perfectly optimizing for CEDH, but we're kind of pushing the deck to be a little bit more focused in the way it works. So let's get started there. Starting off, the cards that are being taken out, we have Siege Gang Commander. He does generate us 3 tokens when he enters the battlefield. Specifically 1/1 red goblins, and you can pay 2 to sack a goblin and have him deal 2 damage to any target. 4 bodies on 1 creature isn't bad. The ability to kind of use him as a removal piece is decent, but I really feel like Siege Gang Commander is just better suited to a Goblin Tribal deck than a Boros token deck. In a very similar vein, we have Legion War Boss, right? The fact that it can mentor some of our creatures is cool, but ultimately, I feel like he's just much better suited to being in a Goblin deck specifically. The goblins that he creates are forced to attack immediately. They're little 1/1s. They might be a little bigger due to some of our effects and whatnot, but I feel like there are better cards out there, and we don't need Legion War Boss. Sticking to too narrow of a card, we have the Mer Battlesphere. Mer Battlesphere is good, right? I'm not here to say that it's not. But you want it in a Mer deck. Or at the very least, an artifact creature deck, or an artifact-centric deck, and that's just really not what this is. So Mer Battlesphere, get on out of here. We have Hordling Outburst, going back to the goblins being a little too narrow, and you might be thinking, well, Mech Minion. That's 3 different goblin cards you've taken out. Couldn't you have leaned more heavily into goblins for this deck? We definitely could have, but that's just not the direction that I personally wanted to lean in, right? So, Hordling Outburst, get out of here. Speaking of things that kind of lean a little bit more in one direction, this is one of our lords, right? Creatures we control would get +3/+0 if we controlled at least 3 artifacts. The deck, by default, has 18 artifacts, a number of which are specifically equipment. We have a number of mana stones in here, but I'm really not feeling the Metalcraft in this. I mean, a 5/4 with first strike's definitely not bad out even on its own. You could argue he's like an alternate commander for the deck, but it's just not the direction that I want to run with it, so he's out. Speaking of that equipment, I think there's too much equipment, and the equipment's not bad by any means, right? You know, trample and lifelink, and +3/+0, pretty good. But we're not... Life is a resource, and we're not spending it in this deck, right? We are going to generate enough creatures where we will always have someone to stay up and block, you know, be it chump blocking or like we play our cards correctly. You know, really taking out, being a deterrent from attacking us. So I just think we have there are better things that can go into that slot. If it gave some toughness with it, you know, maybe keep it, but it doesn't. Mesa the Valiant. So Mesa the Valiant is kind of a tough cut, right? When you first play it, it's not going to equip anything. There are a couple cards in here that do, you know, they allow you to create a creature and attach it immediately. So you're paying 6 for this. And what are you getting for that 6 mana? Nothing. Now granted, as you're generating a bunch of tokens, Mesa the Valiant is getting stronger. I just don't think it's strong enough to justify keeping in the deck. While the Skyclaves at least attaches itself right away, it does give +2/+2 flying first strike, which is actually pretty good. That 4 to equip is a little expensive. And again, I'm not leaning super heavily into equipment here, so we're gonna take out a couple of them. Sticking with getting rid of artifacts, we have a little mana rock here. It costs 3. You can tap it for a red, which isn't bad, but it's not great. Eventually, you know, you can pay 3 and sack it to create one nice big golem. You can only do it at sorcery speed, which is kind of a downside. You also can't do it the turn that you used it for, like the mana generation. So it's a little slow, a little clunky, and I just think there are better ways to get repeatable token generation out there. And jumping back to our creatures is the Harmonious Archon. You might be thinking to yourself, that's a crazy thing to get rid of. You know, non-Archons are going to have a base power and toughness at 3/3. So, like, basically all of our tokens, because we don't create any Archon tokens, are going to be 3/3 base, right? Which seems good, but it's problematic because it turns off specifically a key piece of repeatable card draw, and that card draw is in the form of Mentor of the Meek. We want, you know, small creatures to be entering the battlefield, and with Harmonious Archon in the field, it's just not happening, right? That being said, we do have 10 cards out. Let's add 10 cards in. Alright, so we have Adeline Resplendent Cathar at $8.19. He is great. Right? I think it's actually she's great. So their power is equal to the number of creatures you control, which is going to be huge. They're going to create 3 creatures on attack every turn. Those things are attacking, which kind of goes back to our Legion War Boss, but we're generating more of them. And I think that, you know, that counts for something. We want to be able to create a lot of them. I think it's just, it's a straight up step up from Legion War Boss. I would say that, like, that's your 1-to-1 switch. Following that up, we have Divine Visitation. Divine Visitation comes in at $6.24. If one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, that many 4/4 White Angels are created instead. And they have Vigilance, right? So this is fantastic. It's going to create a bunch of nice beefy 4/4 Angels as opposed to a bunch of generally like 1/1, maybe some like 2/2s. Following that up, we have Halo Fountain. Halo Fountain comes in at around $3.70. So this is actually great for a number of reasons, right? One, we have the ability to untap a bunch of our creatures, right? Let's just start there. Untapping creatures, we're giving pseudo-vigilance to our creatures. The cheapest one is going to let us create more bodies. The second one is going to let us draw cards. Card draw is great. We love card draw. And the last one, where we're untapping 15 tapped creatures we control and just winning the game, alternate win con. It's definitely something you're going to have to, like, kind of protect to some extent, but I think it has a home here, right? It has a home in pretty much every white token generating deck that that creates tokens. Let's keep it moving. We have our Inspiring Leader. So this is a background. Backgrounds are relatively new-ish, but from, back in the Battle for Baldur's Gate. So this is gonna, be a nice little anthem for all of our tokens. I know that kind of turns off our Mentor the Meek, but, I still think it's an option. We're playing it. Because the Divine Visitation also turns off Mentor, right? And that's kind of my issue with playing Mentor of the Meek in token decks, is you want to play a lot of tiny creatures, but also you want those tiny creatures to become big beefy creatures, right? It's a weird dilemma. So hopefully you have one or the other. Because outside of that, Mentor the Meek is kind of just dead. Like, he's a body, which is fine, but he's meant to draw you cards. So I could very easily have seen myself taking out Mentor the Meek, leaning into the my creatures are going to be big and beefy strategy. And if I were to take Mentor the Meek out for that reason, I probably would have left in the Harmonious Archon. Following that up, we have Oketra's Monument. So white spells cost one less to cast. And every time we cast a creature spell, we get to create a 1/1 warrior creature token with Vigilance. We're casting a lot of creatures. Creatures are kind of our bread and butter. And a lot of those creatures are already generating us tokens. This way they're generating us a little more. This comes in at just under $2 at $1.99. I didn't mention the price for Inspiring Leader, but it's only 20 cents, so super cheap, super budget. Following that up, we have Outlaw's Merriment. So we are going to get, something that's random here, right? But a 3/1 Trample Hasty Boy is cool. A 2/1 Lifelinky Hasty Boy is fine. I like the lifelink. I don't mind the haste. The 1/2 Rogue that when it enters deals 1 damage to any target is cool. And again, this is just really a nice source of repeatable token generation. We want to constantly be spitting out tokens. Speaking of constantly spitting out tokens, Rabble Rousing. Rabble Rousing comes into us at 84 cents. It has a pseudo draw in the form of Hideaway 5. Whenever we attack with 1 or more creatures, we're going to create that many tokens. If we have 10 or more creatures, we get to play the card for free. So this is a nice way to kind of play some like bigger boys and also just generate a lot of tokens, hopefully pushing us towards the ability to use our alternate win con in the Halo Fountain. Prosperous Partnership. This is a good way for us to get a little bit of extra ramp. We did take out, a mana rock. And yeah, I would argue that this is, for this deck specifically, a good 1-to-1 replacement. They cost the same. We are given 2 bodies, which, in my opinion, is pretty strong for this deck because, again, we're going wide. You can wait until it gets back around to you, and so, like, the player to your right goes to pass, and when they go to move to their end step, you basically tap as many untapped creatures as you have, and create treasure tokens, and you can actually use this in combination with Halo Fountain, right? If you tap 15 creatures, you generate 5 treasure. You crack those 5 treasure to use as white, you untap all those creatures, and oh my goodness, did you just win the game on your opponent's end step? Yes, you did. Going a little older, we have released the Gremlins. This is from Aether Revolt way back in the day. So it's going to create you a bunch of bodies, but also it's going to let you destroy a lot of artifacts. Commander is definitely an artifact-heavy format, in the form of mainly mana rocks and the like, but there are also some just other key artifacts that you might want to get rid of, be they equipment, be they, things that are letting your opponents search for cards, all kinds of stuff. Just a good way to slow them down. It is at sorcery speed, so it's definitely not as good as some other artifact removal, but in this case it is also going to give you some bodies. And those bodies, again, are important. That's what we're all about here. And last, but certainly not least, we have Twin Flame. So we're going to just make copies of our opponent's creatures. They are tokens. We do have to exile them at the end step. If you really wanted to drop a little bit of money, you could go grab like Sundial the Infinite and stuff like that for the deck. But as this is sort of a one-off for the deck in terms of having to exile or sack the tokens at the end step, I don't really see it as worth it per se. That being said, those are my 10 in, those are my 10 out. Let's go back over to looking at the deck itself and take a look at some of our key cards that we left in the deck. So Adriana, Captain of the Guard, who I would argue is actually the secondary commander for the deck, has melee, and she gives all of your other creatures melee. So, especially when you combine this with Adeline Resplendent Cathar, you move to attack. Cool, all your other creatures have melee, and now they're each getting +3/+3 for the turn. So now you didn't create a bunch of 1/1s, you created a bunch of attacking 4/4s, right? Pretty good. Another key creature to highlight is our Gold Knight Commander. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, creatures we control get +1/+1 to end a turn. So, all of the things that are going to let us create creatures are now going to also buff all of our creatures. Phantom General is just going to give all of our tokens +1/+1. Nice little lordship. It's on a 2/3 body, so it's one of those things where, they are in range of being bolted and just being taken off the field. But I think there are bigger problems that we could have on our board, and so Phantom General might be innocuous enough where they're going to leave it be. Prava of Steel Legion. can one create tokens, which is pretty nice if we have some like extra mana floating around and like it goes to get back to us, or we just want to pump out a dude to have Gold Knight Commander trigger. But I think more importantly is the static ability, where whenever it is our turn, creature tokens that we control get +1/+4, so another token lord effect. This one's out of bolt range. And then, as I mentioned earlier on in the video, we have our Silver Ring Squadron, who's just going to get big and beefy the more creatures we have, and whenever it attacks, we get to create a number of creatures equal to the number of opponents we have. So a lot like Adeline, this is going to generate a bunch of creatures. It's going to generate 3 initially, and then as like the game goes on, it'll create a few less, but be no less impactful. But yeah, that's the deck. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the upgrade. Again, it's a nice little budget upgrade. We had $25 to spend, and we only hit 2347. If you guys enjoyed this content, feel free to subscribe to the channel for more. Hit that like button if you liked it. If there's anything I could do to improve the videos, leave a comment below about, what you'd like to see done to make them a little bit more enjoyable to watch. And until next time, guys, have a good one.